I was mayor 97 to 2001. One of the memos that you have is from 2000, okay? When this topic came up then about snow shovel ordinances. And I was rather shocked this year, particularly when I did the community outreach call that was just an appeal to say, people, please, I know we had a major snow event, it's been 48 hours, please make an effort to shovel your snow. And while I don't want particularly senior citizens out breaking their backs, interestingly enough, it's senior citizens that do shovel their snow on a regular basis and will be the first ones to contact me about why other people aren't shoveling their snow. And or I also hear about parents that again are concerned about children getting to and from bus stops. So where do we go from here? Adjudication could help with us, I guess, writing ticketing. I would hate to be writing tickets and having to enforce this. I want to bring up, though, before we divulge into these options and how we would find out better about how our residents would feel, is let's first talk about an idea that Kevin Barrett presented, which I think is a great idea, and I would love to try it for this winter season, is that when a major snow event occurs and we have people that for whatever reason refuse to shovel, can't hire somebody to shovel, because I do want to know that we do assist at least with end of driveway clearing on senior citizens, or if somebody has a severe medical condition, that we would approach them and let them know that we have a list of students seeking community service hours. These are National Honor Society students and or athletes. And so that at no cost to them, they can have a student come and shovel their sidewalk and clear it, as long as they were willing to sign a waiver not holding the student or the village responsible for any, or if they nick the lawn, we're not going to come back and repair a nick in the lawn in the spring. So I'm going to throw that on the floor to get discussion.
What would happen if one of the students gets hurt, shovels? Now, whose liability would that be?
It was my understanding they would be covered just as when they volunteer for the village, when they work any other event.
Oh, okay. So there is.
And how is that? Is the village covering them, or are they just considered?
We're indemnified because they're a volunteer to the village. I'm trying to think of the name that.
That's the word.
Yeah, but there's actual name for when you have volunteers. I mean, we've encountered this when we've done community cleanups. Same thing. We have students that go out in the wetlands and do cleanups.
Okay.
I like the idea, but I just know someone out there is going to abuse it. I'm not saying that'd be reason enough not to try it, but just one other thought that runs through my mind, because I have a tendency to think in a devious manner. No, I know.
Who would have guessed?
Surprise you all, is what would stop me from, and I have a sidewalk. I live on a corner across from a bus stop. I frequently do mine and some of my neighbors, because I'm retired, I'm off during the day, I'll shovel that. What would stop me from saying, let me contact the National Honor Society kids, they're young, let them do it. We could have our whole village shoveled by National Honor Society. They can get all their hours in no time flat. And that's just one possible way of return, but overall, I like the idea.
I think the idea has merit. I think the problem is the people who dig in their heels in the snow and just don't want their sidewalk shoveled, period. It's not the ones who aren't able to do it, it's the ones that refuse to do it. They're not gonna let anybody else do it for them.
And that's a possibility. That is a possibility.
But I think, it's certainly worth a try for a season and see. It shows that we're making an effort to look at ways to solve the problem without putting ordinances on the books right away.
Has there been any discussion with National Honor Society yet, or is it just a?
No, I wanted to feel out the board. I talked to Jim Rock briefly, that's our attorney. I wanted to see how the board felt as a whole before we even went to, I think Kevin has some input with some athletes though.
I think, I think what we'd have to do is that either you or I would have to go talk to, the athletic director at Central and see if this would be something that you'd be willing to let his athletes do on their own, to collect community service hours, because, they're preaching, always give back to the community. That's where, you and I talked that, last week, the team actually, had members of the best buddy group come in and practice with the team for the first half an hour of practice. So we had special needs kids out there practicing football.
Well, for the most part, football would be ended by the time the major
Yeah,
snow
there's still
season
wrestling,
comes.
there's still
No,
track.
I understand that, but they have to, especially the upperclassmen, regardless, get X amount of community service hours,
So it'd be
And on the flip side, we would also be going to Round Lake School District because we also have Round Lake National Honor Society students that work a lot of our events, and that would probably be the first contact for the Cranberry Lake side of town. So, yeah.
Who owns the sidewalks? Does the village own the sidewalk, or do the residents own the sidewalk? Because my question is that we're so concerned about people not allowing us to clear the sidewalks. Do they own their sidewalks, or do we own their sidewalks? So if
We repair the sidewalks, they are responsible for clearance. And that's why we have a snow and ice, removal act in the state of Illinois, which we've tried to publicize through newsletters, because I've had residents in the past say that they don't shovel because they fear that they shovel and then they will get sued that they didn't do an adequate job if somebody falls. And that is a falsehood. That is not true in the state of Illinois. If you make a reasonable attempt, whether you do a good job or only a so-so job, you cannot be sued for, you could be sued for anything, but it wouldn't be held up in court. You would be protected by the Snow and Ice Removal Act in the state of Illinois. Now, what I did have Jeff put some ballpark figures on is if we decided to pass an ordinance, and yes, we have to take into consideration, as Kara Horn pointed out, we only have sidewalks on one side of the street, but we also have sections of common sidewalk, which abut wetland and open spaces that are no man's land. They lead somewhere, and they lead to a bus stop in most cases, and that the village would be obligated to clear. So I had Jeff put a ballpark figure of how many feet of sidewalk and what man hours and equipment, because we'd be buying a couple snow blowers.
Yeah, we would, right now, for just all the common areas, we're looking at just under 600 feet spread out throughout the whole village. I mean, not a huge amount, but they're all in different areas, so it doesn't sound like much, but once you get a snow blower, you're gonna have to get it into a trailer, get it into a truck, drive over here, unload it, move it along, load it back up, drive out to the next one. It took me about 45 minutes just to go out and measure. So figure if we had a 2-inch snowfall, maybe it's gonna take you an hour to do each section per se.
That's if you're not plowing.
If we're not plowing, right.
Well, and that's the other issue. As a village service, our streets are the priority. And so how quickly or promptly do we get the sidewalk cleared?
And the bike path.
Well, we clear the bike path, but the bike path comes last. The bike path is last. Street clearance, as soon as Jeff is cleared, then he goes to the bike
Then we
path.
go to the bike path. So
can you use
we can use the tractor for that, you can't use it for the sidewalk, we'd have to go buy,
Now, here's another flip side, okay? We know that there's no parking on the village streets after 2 inches of snowfall, because then plows are gonna be coming out. However, when it comes to clearing of sidewalks, whether it's through an ordinance, or it's through National Honor Society students, and sending public works out, we could set a different margin.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
It doesn't have to be, most kids can walk to the bus in 2 or 3 inches of snow on the sidewalk and make it there okay. It isn't till we have a foot of snow, and the worst part is, as what happened last year, we got hit with snow, barely got it cleaned up, and then we got hit again. And so those that did shovel, now you have double the effort, and then what compounded is, by the time I sent the CTY call out, it warmed up enough during the day that you had slush form, and then at night it turned to ice. So I had one resident call me who was very angry because she went out to try to shovel, and now it was ice. So what was she supposed to do about that?
So you could walk in the factor.
I have a comment. Are you guys?
You know what?
discussing this
I'm gonna break with President, as I sometimes do. We're a very small crowd, so I'm gonna welcome, Mark, you had your hand raised earlier, I think that had been about route. But let's stick with snow shoveling for now. So Kara, go ahead.
Okay, it's Cara. actually.
Cara, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so you guys are throwing out other alternatives.
yeah.
And part of my, problem with the whole thing is that you're only saying that half the residents, or whatever, however many residents have these sidewalks, are gonna be required to shovel. So why can't Hianesville do something to the fact of allowing any resident to shovel any sidewalk? And so the Illinois law says something about if you are the owner of the property and you shovel and someone hurts themselves, then they can't sue or anything. So can't Hianesville pass something that says, look, anyone can shovel,
You can,
we don't
it's
care.
that way now, quite frankly. I don't think anybody would ever complain. I know I wouldn't complain if anybody ever shoveled or mowed my grass. 307 Buck Drive, come by anytime. I don't have a sidewalk in all fairness, but I grew up in Chicago, and you want to talk about a sidewalk. I had a wide sidewalk. I had a sidewalk that went up to my front door. I had a sidewalk that wrapped around to the back door, and our garage was not attached, and it was at the back of our lot. Our driveway went from Caldwell Avenue to the back of our property, and my butt was out there shoveling. So that's just the way I was raised, folks.
I think the other thing too with having somebody at the National Honor Society or whoever, when do they get a call? 24 hours later, 48 hours later? Is there a list? Are they there when it snows? If you're not there to shovel it almost exactly when it's snowing, you kids start walking on it, you're not going to shovel it anyway.
Well, if it's a small amount, yes, that's why I'm saying maybe we want to set a limit. It's when there's major snowfall. So what do you say? You're going to say 4 inches, 6 inches? George?
I understand that there may be some people who don't shovel their snow, their walks, because they were afraid of being sued, which you addressed. Are there any other reasons, or just people are being obstinate and don't want to do anything?
I had last year 2 people chew me out on the phone. How dare I even suggest they shovel their snow? They're not going to shovel it because they don't feel that they should have to, and if they don't want to, they're not going to.
Still only 2 people.
You know.
Out of how many people that are here? I mean, everyone's.
I heard from more than 2 people, Cara. I'm saying I had 2 people that said to the point of, I will not shovel no matter what, nor do I feel I have a right to. I had different opinions, but I'm saying I had 2 people,
That would only shovel if the ordinance was passed.
you know,
That's right.
and they were gonna fight that tooth and nail, you know. So they said, they're not here tonight, they're not here, they didn't come to the town hall meeting, but that's what they said at the time.
Do these same people not mow their lawn?
No, they seem to mow their lawn.
We all know that people can be strange.
Yeah. Well, here's another thing. I'll give you a classic example, okay? I've known people in the community that when their kids were young and they had a bus stop on their block, they shoveled their snow. As soon as their kids got older, they stopped shoveling their snow. They don't, because they don't care about the rest of the community. They only care, you know, so everybody has a different view or take on it. It's all for different reasons, you know. I also had people say, like it was suggested earlier, should the village shovel everybody's snow? Well, we don't have a homeowners association. Communities that do that pay into a homeowners association. It's just like we have townhomes. The townhomes sidewalks are shoveled because their association has them cleared. We don't have a homeowners association. There's a couple in Grace Lake, not all of them. There's a couple subdivisions that have a homeowners association that pay for their groundskeeping and they shovel the sidewalks. I don't think that's gonna pass by referendum, particularly in these times, to have a homeowners association to be shoveling the sidewalks through the entire village.
Well, I think in retrospect, I guess my neighborhood is pretty good because when we have a major snow event, it's like my wife has got my kids out shoveling everybody, and then as they get busy with their school activities, as things start picking up, the other neighbors actually pitch in, and we get the whole neighborhood.
And that's what we
cleared.
need more of, is people pitching in and
To
talking.
the point to where one of my neighbors works in Northbrook, and she was snowed in a big snow event, and her husband works in Franklin Park, and one of her kids was buried in the driveway, and we dug them out, and next thing I know, there's this basket of cookies sitting on the front porch, and I'm going like, where'd this come from? You know, so I'm going like, I mean, I don't know whether that's just,
But you can't make that happen, but,
I don't know if
that's what you need
in
more
my
of.
neighborhood, or if that you're,
You have more working families, both parents are working, I get it, it's hard, you got hours, and if you could take turns with your neighbors, I mean, during major storm events, I have been very thankful because I have been up here addressing issues and making sure the village is clear, and if nobody's at my home right away, my neighbor comes over with his snow blower and clears my driveway before even I get home or my husband, and that's just being a good neighbor, and I wish more people would do this, particularly with bus stops. If you have 5 kids at a bus stop, can you take turns? I know we have a lot of snow blowers. The thing that blows my mind is it's not even shoveling. There's a lot of snow blowers in this community. Snow blowing does not take that much time.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Linda, but the bottom line is that there are a small number of people who do not shovel their walks. Small, less than 20?
I would say in this last snow event, we had more than 20.
Much more? I'm trying to quantify.
Yeah.
That's a couple
Yeah.
feet of snow.
Yeah, it's just the amount of snow.
it's
Yeah.
the Georgia principle, God put it there, he'll take it away.
Well, here's a,
Go ahead.
the other thought, going back to how formal we want to get, is one of my recommendations is we let it ride, but we introduce this volunteer program. And maybe we only bring it up is if it becomes an issue and offer it at that time. If we want to look further and get real numbers from residents, we have a CTY call system that has a feature which I've been hesitant to use. This is one of the times it could be used because the only thing it really serves is a yes or no question. Otherwise, to do a more complex survey, you need to go online or have paper and pencil, whatever. We could send out a CTY call explaining that the village is exploring whether a residential snow shoveling ordinance is needed. And do you as a resident want the board to explore and adopt such an option? Do you favor this or oppose? And they would hit 1 on their phone for favor and 2 for oppose. And then we can get some more concrete numbers. You'll get some hang-ups. Some people will hang up on a CTY call regardless. But you would certainly get more significant numbers than what we're talking about with emails and complaints. But, again, if you do that, you have to be prepared to take some action when you get the numbers back. And we'll make it clear in the CTY call, this is not a guarantee that the ordinance is going to be adopted one way or another, but at least we'll know, we can say X amount do want us at least to consider adopting a snow shoveling ordinance, or wow, we got a major reaction that no, there are 80% that do not want to see this happen.
One of the things that we might do is if we have a major snowfall, I don't know if you want to say say 6 inches or 12 or something, that maybe some of the trustees that aren't working during the day or somebody could actually go around and see how many, after let's say 48 hours, how many sidewalks are not shoveled. And then we'll get an idea of how big a problem this really is. Because I think that's a reasonable thing to have an answer to before we, go off the deep end.
Well, again, we're really talking a significant snowfall. I mean,
Right, right.
yeah,
Oh, right.
yeah, if you get 3 inches of
No,
snow,
no,
yeah.
and I'm saying if we
Yeah.
get 6 inches or a foot, whatever we decide that, okay.
So now I gotta worry about you, Georgianne, trudging around in a blizzard.
Well, I think she was volunteering me.
I was looking at you.
Yeah.
All I remember
No,
is trudging
me.
around, well, yeah, trudging around when we were canvassing way back when we had to get signatures and things in February when the snow was up to our knees because people didn't shovel the front of their house. But, I mean, George and I know I'm always volunteering you, but I'm sure we'd be willing to go around and just get an idea of how many are even the culprits that we're concerned about.
She's sure.
Well,
We haven't done that, we've gotten some complaints. I don't like the survey idea because surveys, the return on it is just such a small percent. So if we get 10% back in the community, it's roughly 400. And if the majority of those are 4, does that mean, and even though you say it's advisory, I don't think there's been enough complaints to justify the development of a ordinance. I don't support it. I think if you've got a neighbor that can't show, well, I think some of the problems with an ordinance is if somebody is sick at the time, if they're on vacation and gone, does the village then do it? Do we slap a ticket on their door because they haven't done it? I think there's too many negatives and it's going to be a boondoggle. One lady who was complaining last year, I asked her or suggested to her as kindly as I could, I said, look, why didn't you shovel it? It wasn't well received, surprisingly, but I do not support an ordinance.
Well, and you raise a good point, because there will be people who will make excuses. They will say, I had the flu, whatever, I missed my plane, whatever. And so now, they want you to waive the ticket if you've gone to the extreme of, so it is a nightmare.
Could we put something in the newsletter, say in the November newsletter, making recommendations, like you were saying, be neighborly if you have a snow.
Well, we've done that. I mean, I'm happy, we'll do it again. We do it every year.
It's in the packet.
I mean, it's in the packet, past articles. I mean, the problem is not all residents read their newsletters. When they come in to pay their utility bill, the newsletter is still behind it. You can tell it hasn't been read. We put information on the website, and some people read it and some people don't. We do a community outreach call, and we did that out of desperation, if you will, as an appeal. And I tried to say, please be considered, think of, whatever, it's been 48 hours since then. And, I just want you to keep in mind that obviously I and the staff, when we're here every day, we get the bulk of the calls. That comes with the territory. I have over 20-some years of customer service management. I'm used to being yelled at. It's nothing new to me. And I'm happy to listen to complaints. But it's the same thing over and over. And people, say, why can't you do something? Why isn't this any better? What can we do different? So I do want to have a record. I think it's healthy. That is part of our job. Every few years, we should revisit it, and we should look at it, and at least say, we looked at it, we know what the cost is, we know what the figures are. Can we handle the bus stops better? We'll try. But again, it's also communication. Residents have an obligation to let us know. How much can you or should you have to drive around? Are you going to monitor every single bus stop every day to say, gee, we didn't scoop out quite enough?
I think the thing too is you have to figure, like you said, all the town home associations have theirs done.
Mhm.
So say that's 270 residents or family homes, whatever. And
Or
then the other half, the village only has sidewalks on one side of the street. So now you eliminate another half of that. So now you're down to probably about 200 maybe that have sidewalks. Even if it, I don't, almost couldn't.
Well, and then do you do
And
the
we've got
C-
the open space.
and do you do the CTY call if we did it to only the ones that have sidewalks? Because is it fair to ask the people that have no
That's what I'm
sidewalks?
saying.
Sure, I want it, because I don't have to do it.
Sure, so if you did an ordinance, 500 people aren't even affected, so.
Right. Well, we can control who the CTY call is.
I understand
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah.
It would seem to me though, I mean, just taking everything in here, regardless if we have an ordinance, if we don't have an ordinance, if we're gonna make people do it, if we're not, if we're gonna have the volunteers come in, the way I'm reading things is that the village probably really should be doing the ones that we own.
Right.
In the open areas as it is. Am I wrong on that statement? If we're gonna make everybody else go out and do this stuff, do you think we should be doing ours?
So I was gonna ask you, the last snowstorm that we had, when did you finally get to those areas? And did you actually clean them up?
We've never done this.
We've never
Okay.
cleared them, no,
So-
no.
so
The-
then-
We've never cleared them. And the only, and that's why I said
Now
if
we're
we,
adding
if,
two.
well,
Yeah.
that was my point. Why I had them do the figures, is if we did adopt an ordinance, we would have to,
Right.
certainly. But Jeff now raised a good point. If we want to set an example
We have
to encourage people, whether we have an ordinance or not, should we be doing those common areas? Because as a courtesy or added benefit to our residents, and I think it also helps our businesses, is even though the bike path is actually Lake County bike path, we have Public Works clear it. We clear it on Hianesville Road in Washington. That improves our quality of life for our residents. We have residents that take the Pace bus at 120 in Hianesville Road, and they need a safe way to walk to get to wherever they live in the community. So that bike path is a vital path. Also, if you don't want to drive in those conditions, we have residents that have walked up to Walgreens to get their milk or bread that they need during a storm. So having that bike path clear has been an asset, and we have been thanked repeatedly about that.
Can we poll the board and see if there's enough support one way or the other to even pursue this topic beyond tonight?
Well, I'm going to poll the board in 2 levels, okay? Let's poll the ordinance, because I think that's dead, but if I could have a poll, John, or, no, Wally? Georgianne? Okay, I'm unsure. Gary? Gary? Kevin?
No.
Okay, so we have 5 no's and 1 unsure. Now, what about the utilizing students for this winter? John?
Absolutely.
Wally?
Yes.
Yes, if the school's approved.
Gary?
It all depends on, when do they start, if they're not gonna be there when it originally starts, it's almost kind of wordless to have them do it.
But if they're willing to volunteer,
I
and they're willing
understand
to
that,
do
but
it.
it's a timely thing too. If they're not gonna be able to get at it, and, and who's gonna set it up, and who's gonna call them and tell them when to do it, or when,
Well, all I'm asking is for a poll. There's still work to be done. We would have to go back to talk to the schools and talk to the students to see if they're even interested in doing it. I'm just saying, is this something I should pursue and bring to the next meeting? That's what I'm asking.
I'm not in favor.
So we have 3 in favor, 1, what about Jerry and Kevin?
Undecided, leaning towards no.
Okay,
I think it's a good thing just to give the students an opportunity, whether we can make it work or not is, that's why I brought it to the table.
okay,
So,
okay.
We
Okay.
we could start with the residents that are on the current seniors plow list.
Right.
I mean, that would be like a good, to try to weed out some of the abuse or what have you.
Well, that way, they can start on that.
Because there's a good 30, I think last year we were up to 30. So at least we have names and addresses, and maybe these people we can contact and say, if this pans out, we, have people available that can do this for you, at no cost.
So I was gonna say, sign up before,
Well, that's what we
Right.
typically
Well-
do.
And instead of those kids go to shut down their own sites.
All right, then,
That's right.
Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, then my job would be, and Kevin, I'll recruit your help, and Georgianne, your help with Ron Lake, if I can, with contacting the schools and talking a little further with Jim Rock, and decide if logistically we can even come up with a approval and policy, if we're gonna, and bring that back to the board. See if it'll fly or not, if it's doable. Maybe.
I'll reach out to the athletic director after homecoming. Not this week, but
Yeah, no, that's fine, that's well before the next board meeting, so that's fine.
Is that a common thing? Because I didn't know whether the Raleigh athletes would have that too. I mean, do all athletes?
A lot of schools have done community service projects.
For the athletes?
Yeah.
Okay. So I
Yeah.
talked to
Particularly the varsity.
National Honor
I
Society.
can talk to the athletic
Well,
director.
and or what you do is you also get juniors and seniors that might not be maybe an official requirement of their program. If they're planning on going to college,
It looks good.
on their application. And some actually now make it a requirement to talk about what community service you've done, where you get added points in the application, so that's a big deal.
and that's where this whole thing started from, because I'm going through that, the application process with my daughter.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and Jimmy did years of community service, and it came in very handy.
I hear he did a pretty good job of clearing some brush with his truck one day.
Okay, now I have one more poll, before we close.
We are done with the ordinance of thought.
Yes, that's dead, that's not going anywhere, that's dead, okay? We're gonna get more logistical information for these students and utilizing them somehow. And it's not gonna be a, golden bullet, even if we make it work, it's not gonna solve every problem, but at least it would be an effort. The other poll is the common area sidewalks. Do we feel that whether it's, we didn't budget for it this year, do we feel that we should look to do it this year or discuss it for next year's budget? If we want to set an example for snow shoveling, do we want to look into clearing certain areas that are common sidewalk areas?
I know that you're busy doing plowing in a big storm, so you wouldn't be doing the sidewalks anyway. Do we have people that could do the sidewalks, or are you saying that's part of Dave's crew? Or do we have,
We would have, I could have manpower available to do it.
you would?
Yeah, we just have to buy a snow blower.
Do you have, estimating the 600 linear feet, do you have any idea what the cost would be for one snowfall if it was 6 inches or 12 inches or something?
Oh, if it was 12 inches, you're probably looking at a good, at least a good half day. I'd say a solid day.
3 feet or 4 feet sidewalks?
4. So, if a decent snow blower, a self-propelled, that's probably like a 32 or whatever, you're looking at probably about $1,000 for one of those. So that's getting you up, and then you turn around and you come back and you're done.
And hourly, you're saying the whole day of, I'm just trying to get an idea of what the cost of the manpower would be.
Well, if we put on, some of the seasonals are still around, so if we had an actual event, if I couldn't do it, then I could certainly send one of them out to do it, so whatever they're.
Well, if you're talking about our part-timers, it depends when the snow thing occurs.
Well, exactly, there's a lot of variables, but I know some of them, it's, anything with snow, it's unknown. If it's a heavy snow, it's gonna take longer. If it's a light snow, it's not gonna be so bad. I would just figure on most events, you're looking at probably 8 hours, maybe less.
8 hours, how many people?
There'd be one. Jeff, so you looking at,
We have the gator,
mm-hmm.
figure out mechanical engineer to put a plow on that.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say, can we use a
I was
tractor,
gonna say-
can we use a gator, or can we have a brush attachment?
The tractor,
Put on a
the tractor would eat up the grass.
Tractor.
Yeah, the tractor is
It's
too
too
small.
wide.
You got,
That's what it is,
Got
it's
a
like
back
that.
to it.
Right, but I mean.
But on our little sidewalks, it'd be ripping up that.
Well, let's finish the poll.
yeah,
Yeah, we
Do
can,
we investigate it and try to do it, or do we not?
Yes.
Yes.
investigate.
Yeah.
For doing the.
So we have three yeses
For
for
the
investigating,
common-
for the common sidewalks, okay? Kevin?
Yep. Yep.
yes.
Okay.
Do we-
Okay, we've made some accomplishments here.
Jeff,
We've made headway.
Do we have a Bobcat?
we do not own one, but I have one that's available.
Through our
Our
contract,
county
through our
contract,
contract.
That,
Can rent
we
my
use that at
snow.
work, basically, we use a Bobcat to clean our sidewalks out. So, and that way you have it and it just.
Talk about community service.
How deep is snow? Or how-
We usually do 3 or 4 inches, whatever we have. We have the same snow as we do have.
No, but I mean, I can't picture using, no, I'm just saying, I can't picture using a Bobcat unless it's heavy snow.
It's
Yes,
a
but
toy.
it's 3 or 4 inches, but we don't have a lot of sidewalk. Our building is huge.
Oh,
Plus we
okay,
have-
okay, I'm just picturing our little sidewalk, this Bobcat.
Right, but that Bobcat's only gonna be about 4 feet, so it'll just go right in there, it'll fit in between. Boom.
I could look at it.
Actually, what's your name? Not Grower.
We're so to speak.
Russo is they have
That's what I'm
the snow plows for parking lots with the sections that raise, and you can custom fit them, who makes those? They have
That
them
sounds
outside.
expensive.
That might be something that you could look at for.
Do they have snow vacuums?
Motion to adjourn? Are we ready?
Let's back up a minute. Okay, so, we're in agreement, we're going to
No.
check into the common area sidewalks for clearing.
Check indicated, no ordinance.
No, well, yeah, no, just the last item, just, okay, so we want concrete numbers, that are as close to concrete as possible for labor and equipment, all right? All right,